Allison is a woman that probably can talk to us about some of these things that these folks are doing when they try to come out and everything, because she has her own PR company. She's got a PR company. Where is your PR company based out of? Because I know that I did a little bit of research. Your PR person got in touch with me and everything and said you would be a wonderful guest. And I was wondering, exactly where in this great world are we located at? Because you actually argue that people should not be doing something. And when I saw that, I was surprised. I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. But I want to get a little bit about your history, because I understand that you were actually a journalist yourself, and I've had that background, too, of having been a print journalist. I've got friends that are TV journalists. But it looks like you went that field, and then you decided to go on the opposite side, helping people out with PR and things of that nature. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me first. And so we're in Massachusetts. We're about 90 minutes west of Boston, so we're more towards Springfield, Mass, home of the Basketball Hall of Fame, and more towards Connecticut. So we're here. It's where I was born and raised. I've moved all over New England, and we have clients all over the place. So thanks to being able to work remotely, we can work with anyone. But you're right. Yeah, I was a journalist. That's what I went to school for and loved it. But I got a little tired waking up at 2 in the morning and standing out in the snow and telling everyone to stay home. So as you know, journalism is it's an exhausting field, and I decided to have some children, and it's definitely not really a family oriented business if you want to kind of stay in one market. So got out of the field, worked for a marketing firm, and then 5 years ago, I literally woke up one day and said I was going to start a public relations agency, and here I am.
And it seems like the public relations agency is doing well. And you're right. When I see my friends that are TV reporters, and some that are friends, some that are acquaintances, and they're sitting out there in the middle of a snowstorm and in the middle of a hurricane and things like that, I'm sitting there going like, better you than me. Because when I did it, I was a print journalist, and we would just go and talk to the people after the fact, but they'd be sitting there talking about them in the middle of crazy weather, and I'm sitting there going like, no, I'm not that much of a daredevil. Now, one of the things that you said that I found really interesting as I was looking at some of the points that your people sent us and everything, was you told people to bury the press release. And I'm sitting there going like, when I've worked in the press, I've only worked once at a daily newspaper. The rest of them were, actually twice, because I did a column too for the News and Observer, so that was a daily. So I think it was only twice that I did it. But the rest were weeklies and niche publications, things of that nature. And a lot of times, I hate to say this because it's not, necessarily good journalism, but what they wound up doing is publishing the press release. So in that sense, I was like, it provided a lot of copy for niche publications. So you're telling people to bury the press release. I'm going like, wait a minute. That means that half of like these small rural newspapers, half of like the niche publications, whether they're Latin, African American, or whatever, or even the LGBT kind of papers, they're going to be like losing a lot of copy. Because I just know a lot of times they just do the grab and slap. So they grab it. They may have their typesetter type it in for them, but a lot of times, I mean, when I looked at the article and I would think about people that had probably sent to the press release, and I'm going like, I don't think y'all did much editing. I think y'all just basically just like threw the press release in there.
So I do believe there's still a place for a press release, and what you were just saying, absolutely. We have clients, we'll do press releases when they get awards or when they, have promotions or new hires or, events. So I think that is still the place for a press release, especially for like community papers, like you had mentioned, because you're right. I mean, especially now, their staff is so limited. They just don't have time to fill, and they need to constantly be putting content out. So I do believe that the press release is still alive for those things. But if you're trying to get, your message across through telling a story, or if you're an expert and you're trying to get in the media to talk about something, I think a pitch is a better way to go. We've had a lot more luck with TV stations, with national media, by just crafting a pitch, which is a shortened version of a press release. I can tell you, a lot of the journalists, a lot of producers, they get these 2-page press releases filled with quotes after quotes, and like, this is crazy. I don't have time to read it. So the pitch kind of gets to the point, gives the talking points about what that person can say and what they can speak about. You include some video or photos in their website. It's quick, short, to the point, and then if the journalist is interested in doing the story, then they'll reach back out. Because I think a lot of my friends who are journalists, they just get hundreds and hundreds of emails a day. So they just don't have time to read through that. So there is a place for it, but we're kind of phasing it out with a lot of the national media that we're trying to get and pitching our clients as experts in that. Even for podcasts, it's just quick, get to the point of who's your guest, what can they offer, what sets them apart, contact, and boom. And so it's a lot easier for the business to get that message across too. So they're not spending, days writing this press release and getting it approved and getting a quote from the CEO and all of this, red tape.
Because that's the other thing that I've noticed just in the press in general, and I mean that's one of my beefs. And like I said, I do the podcast, so technically I'm definitely in the journalism field, the journalism/entertainment field, because I also do some emceeing and some creation of some entertainment events and things of that nature. But one of my beefs with journalism is that oftentimes the really serious stories that should be covered, we don't ever hear about. Like I know sometimes, and I'll just use this as an example. I know that this is not necessarily your ethnicity and everything, but I'll just use the black press as an example. I'll be sitting there and I'll be talking to friends of mine that are in that press, and I'll be sitting there going like, wait a minute, you do know that we're in the RTP and that there is more than Reverend Barber. I love Reverend Barber. Reverend Barber is a family friend, and there's more than his activism, there's more than what the church is doing, there's more than the basic stories that are covered. And I would argue that that's even the case in mainstream papers and other niche papers, is that they get caught up in covering what is their niche and everything. And, I'm here Dean is in Jersey, but I'm in North Carolina. North Carolina is the home of the Research Triangle Park. I guarantee you I could probably go into the Research Triangle Park, go talk to some of the scientists over there that are making all kinds of massive discoveries, and nobody has reached out to them. And I just find that great.
I mean, even with some of our clients, too, we have these great stories. We work with this engineering firm. They're doing all this really cool environmental engineering, and we can't get them in press because they're like, that's not really, we don't care about that. We're like, no, but you should, because here's why. And so it does. There's limited staff, I think, in the media now, and you're right. They cover, the same things. They talk to the same people, and everything else they just don't cover anymore, and it's tough. I hear you, and I think that it's getting worse, and it's harder to get your message out because there's so much noise. But I think for a lot of, like you mentioned, those folks that in the science industry, I think podcasts are a great way to get your message out where you can find your niche, and I think that's where podcasts are growing. And even writing blogs and contributing writers and op-eds, because I think that's the way the media is going, and I think that's a good space to get in. But yeah, you're right. Mainstream media, it's difficult. It's harder than ever.
And the other thing about mainstream media, and I'm just like going to put my foot in my mouth and everything, but it's just going to be an interesting conversation and everything, is it seems like we've also gotten to the point where it's all about and this is helping your business, but at the same time, I won't even doesn't hurt it, because it's all about the spectacular. I mean, I am not a big fan. I don't care whether you voted for him or not, but I'm not a big fan. And but it seems that part of the reason of his success was because he's a master pitchman. If nothing else, I will give him credit for that. He is a master pitchman, and there have been some other presidents that were master pitchmen as well that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of Reagan. And even though he was a community organizer, you have to be a pitchman to be a community organizer. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, I would also say Obama was a master pitchman as well. So a lot of times it seems that we get caught up in the pitch and the whole hype versus whatever they're talking about.
Oh, you're right. He is spectacular at PR. Like him or not, that was his thing, and that's what he's continuing. I think that's what a lot of politicians have to, I hate to say it, but to be in the media, you have to learn how to get in the media, and you can't just do what you used to do. You can't just do the typical things that politicians do. And we're starting to see some of the Democrats, kind of step up there and start doing some different things, and even, using social media more. I will say it's very difficult just in the mainstream media to get press if you're not in politics, because I feel like politics just dominates it. And I understand it's important, but it is like a massive amount of the news cycle. And so for businesses and entrepreneurs and people who have really important stories to tell, they're not even telling them, right? Because politics is, and we're not even in 2020 yet. So can you imagine if you put on CNN, MSNBC, any news station, it is all politics, and there's so many stories out there that need to be told. They're just not telling them.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there's amazing stories that we probably should be learning about or telling, some that are might be related to what's going on the political front, but there's a lot that is not related that you're right is absolutely lost that we do not see because all of that concentration around the politics and around the world stage as well. Not that I'm knocking the world stage because, I mean, we definitely need to know more about the world, and I probably need to travel more around the world because I haven't I think I did one of them surveys on Facebook, and I had done like 17 or 20 states, which is not a lot, but at least that was better than countries. I think countries, I might be up to 4.
Yeah, that's still a lot.
Yeah, but I'm also counting like little small countries like the Virgin Islands and things like that. So it's 4 with the caveat, not 4 like 4 major ones.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think the media is constantly changing, right? And social media is playing a big part in it. And I mean, you know, you were in journalism and you still are. Remember when we had to have multiple sources and check sources, and now it's just, it doesn't matter anymore. It's just throwing out with whoever says what, and then they can always retract. So it's definitely changed since I was in it, and it's constantly changing. It's whoever can get the story out first. And then if they're not right, it's okay. They'll just apologize for it and retract it. That's an issue I'm seeing.
I mean, that's one of the things that he's even the person that's sitting over there from D.C. That's one of the things he's a master at. He'll say something, and there'll even be somebody that'll come later and literally play back the quote, and he'll be like, I know I was wrong. I did not. I didn't say that, or it was misinterpreted. And I'm like, you said it. It's your words. How is it misinterpreted? But that's that new creative kind of interpretation. Now, who in your mind, because you're up there in Massachusetts, but if you want to share with us, who have been some of your big clients? I'm sure you've had some, and I just want to know who some of these clients were and what has surprised you about the people that you have represented.
So we had a financial firm in Chicago, and we've got a really cool engineering firm. They're in 6 different states. And see, I've had some authors. I'm trying to think who's really been inspiring to me. Oh, gosh, this is a tough one. Actually, I'll tell you, and they weren't even, we just volunteered our time because my dad was in the military. I've got a lot of military friends. There's a camp in Virginia Beach, and it's a camp for wounded warriors, special needs kids, and Gold Star families. And it was built so they can all go together for, folks who've lost limbs, kids in wheelchairs, everything. They have a ropes course. They have a zero entry pool. They have wave run, all really cool stuff. So it took years to build. It was all through donations. It's run by the Y. And I sent the story out to Fox News, and they immediately got back to me. And I'm thinking, all right, we'll just do a small segment on it. But they sent a crew to go down there for the grand opening. And, I donated my time, and to get the story told, they interviewed Jason Redman, who was a Navy SEAL who nearly died, who was part of building the camp, as well as a family who had 2 twin daughters. One's in a wheelchair, and then the other, a military family, and they lost their son in Iraq. And to listen to them tell their story about how important this camp is, because all of these folks can come together, and nobody understands what it's like to lose a son, a daughter, a brother in the military. Nobody knows what it's like to lose an arm or leg or be disabled, but all of them do. And it's just a place for them to go and connect and have fun. Nobody's looking at them. Nobody's judging them. So to be able to get this story out on the national media it was amazing. It's probably one of the best things I've done in the business so far, just to get their story told. And now everybody knows about it who had watched, the news, and they shared it out, and people were donating. So those are the stories that I like, not really necessarily, as much of, getting clients on the media. It's more about getting a really important story out there and that helping that organization or that person. So that was my favorite. That was last June, actually. So, yeah, that was amazing.
And one of the other things you tell people to do, and not everybody's going to want to do this, because like I said, I've done it for a while. I host an event. I don't mind being in the limelight. I don't think that I'm like a 10 or anything like that. But you're telling people to say hello to the camera. Some folks are going to look at you and be like, I don't even want to say hello to the mirror, much less the camera.
Yeah, because I think And granted, if they're not comfortable, then you could do a little bit of training. But whether you own a small business or you're the CEO or you're a future entertainer or an author, people